What's up, Diablo 4 players? So today I want to talk about Season 8, and a lot of people are talking about quitting the game and Diablo 4's downfall. Now, I was honestly pretty excited about the boss powers, but there was really one area where I really felt like Diablo 4 really needed to stand out, especially since Rod tweeted out and was talking about how this is going to be an awesome season. They had to push it back even. However, I'm excited about the bosses, but I want to be able to take these new boss powers and fight new content other than the boss itself. So I want to go ahead and read some comments at the start, and I want to talk about the frustration that a lot of Diablo players are feeling and some solutions and what I would personally do to change some of the things around as a Diablo partner. Hopefully, maybe we can get these ideas to Blizzard and have these changed. So for starters, I want to read some comments. So this person over here says, Season 8 will be D4's downfall, making T4 and Pit 100 harder, making leveling up to 20 longer, like the earlier stages of the game, is simply wrong in every aspect of the game, and we'll see many players quitting. And this is just from a comment on one of my videos talking about how the leveling process is going to be a lot slower. This person is saying, good, casuals are ruining the game. And I've heard this argument where Diablo 4 is too casual, and it's just like you play for the weekend and you're just like max level, you got all your stuff, you're done, right? And I felt like Diablo 4 is becoming more and more like Diablo 3. And while I personally enjoyed Diablo 3 to an extent, I've always felt like Diablo 2 was the game in the Diablo series that I personally enjoyed the most. It's the one I have the most hours in. However, the thing is that there needs to be new content for people to consume if you want this game to be kind of a live service game. Remember, D2 was never a live service game, but that game was so ahead of its time with its itemization and like the different things that you can do, especially in the PvP area, almost allowing for infinite content. But going into other things that I've seen in the comment section, dude, most of us get done with a rough day at work and just kind of want to enjoy and play the game. They're not looking for like another job where you get to spend so many hours. Now, I play this game a lot. You guys know that as a Diablo content creator playing like 30 hours a day, I enjoy the game for the most part by playing other builds. When you play one build for too long, I totally get it. And like, I'm still at the point, I haven't even hit Para 300. I play the game a lot. And the thing is that it takes too long, specifically, once you're at like Paragon 200 to 300 is a very, very big journey. Most people will never complete a Pit 150. It's not even in their like book to go ahead and do. But I think that making the progression too long will definitely disrupt some of the players' feels for the game when they're like, dude, that guy's Para 300. He doesn't have, anything to do but play Diablo, so that's why he's at that level. It comes down really to efficiency and just doing a bunch of pits. But this guy's kind of dead on. If you're not able to sit there and play all day doing specifically the pit, you're not going to be hitting those higher Paragon levels, especially if everything is going to be slowing down, right? And this person's saying, it looks like I'm going to be skipping Season 8. Have fun. I'll see you in Season 9. This person says, yep, this is the first season I'm skipping. So a lot of players are saying that they're going to be quitting. You could see this player over here actually mentioned something that I think was really important. He's talking about like Druids get no love. Last season they nerfed this. It's kind of weird because a lot of these things are bugged builds, technically, and then like people will say, oh, this is a bugged build, then they remove it for the leaderboards, or they kind of hot fix certain things, and then people get upset because, well, it's like, oh, my favorite build, or the build that I put time into got nerfed. There was a Spiritborn build that I dropped a gameplay of, and I showed off that it can do a Pit 150 in this current season, but then they nerfed that one day later. So it's kind of weird that like certain bugs and certain interactions, they can last the whole season, and some get nerfed immediately. Now, they did technically say they're going to start nerfing things a lot earlier on. They're not going to be doing any mid-season bigger changes, but if something's too OP, they're going to be changing it. But this guy over here, Russell, mentioned something I think is really important. In Season 7, they decided, let's buff the ultimate skills, because, let's be honest, most people throughout the history of Diablo 4 up until this season pretty much didn't play the ultimate. There was a couple ultimates, like maybe Wrath of the Berserker, where you get some like massive buff, right, for your character that just added X damage multiplier or some sort of bonus, and then it would be good. But for the most part, ultimate skills were almost useless, right? And then this season, they're finally good. But then next season, they nerf it, and it feels really awkward that they're nerfing a lot of stuff. And so this is kind of bringing down some of the top tier builds, so they're kind of equalized. But then when you're also making the pit way harder, and you're giving us less loot because they're nerfing loot as well, you can see where players will get upset. Now, this is a video over here by one of my homies, Rob, over here. He's talking about Pit being much harder. Now, the max level of the Pit is 73x harder, which, I mean, that's something that most builds will never really even achieve. In fact, right now, as it stands, most builds will never be able to even do 150 on its own. You have a lot of builds that can do, let's say, Pit 100, but if you take like a lower tier build like one of my favorites, which is Ice Shards, it's nowhere even near being able to complete this at all. Like, it's in a completely different ballpark. And if you're making everything harder, that forces the players that already don't play the top tier, S tier, best #1 build that, you know, you copied a build guide from, it makes their builds even worse. So I think this is a very slippery slope for Blizzard to go ahead and tread and make everything harder when you need to be buffing up some of the builds that are miles. And I'm not talking about, oh, this build needs a 10-20%. I'm talking like 50, 1,000 times extra damage to even be able to compete with the top tier builds. You can see this comment over here: nerf all classes, make game harder equals players quit. And I think that this is a huge thing. The thing that I see a lot of times with Path of Exile, because I play Diablo and I play Path of Exile, I see a lot of times when I'm like playing Path of Exile, like some people come in and be like, dude, I tried this game, man, it's too hard. I couldn't get, you know, I couldn't get to red maps or whatever. Path of Exile is a very hard game. And I think that Diablo was kind of this good entry action RPG for people to play Diablo. If they finish Diablo, they can maybe move on to Path of Exile. And they can still come back to Diablo when, you know, there's a new season or new content. And you can hop in and blast for the weekend. And you can have some fun, maybe make multiple different builds and classes. But I really think that Diablo 4 excelled at being kind of a good entry action RPG for a lot of players, which, you know, is a good thing. But when you're making it so it's a little bit harder, sure, like maybe 10% harder, but when you're going to 73 times harder, this is technically at the highest end. But again, remember that not only are they making the pit harder, but they also are nerfing us. So it's going to be kind of like this compounding, thing here. Now, I was also looking at the most recent Campfire chat to see what like some of the most upvoted comments were. And one of the ones that I found that stuck out, I tried to sort these by most upvoted, but this is the one that I particularly saw that had a bunch of upvotes here, or they call it likes on YouTube. But anyways, this person says, wish the devs would work on endgame things to do, leave leveling and other things alone. Most of the people complaining about fast leveling is streamers that play 24/7. Now, I want to say that I personally felt like Season 4 was the peak of Diablo. That was pretty much where I had the most fun. Season 0 was great too because it was like everything was brand new. But I think Season 4 was a really, really good season overall. Like the game felt pretty good. There was a lot of different builds to play. Things felt relatively good. However, the main thing that I think that this person nailed on is the end game. I don't think we really need to take the developers' times and be like, okay, we need to rework this, we need to do this, make leveling. I don't really think we need to focus in on that as much as we need to focus in on things for the players to do once they are at the max level. And I think that that's the key critical thing that we need to fix. You can see this person saying, Tormented Force make me want to quit. Yeah, he's saying basically it's too hard, okay? Wait until this guy gets into Season 8. And a lot of people were kind of commenting on, like, reasons why. Like, he didn't understand. And I want to say that this is a huge area where Blizzard was originally trying to fix, making the game a little bit easier. If you guys didn't know, I actually made a little short on this. It was a short that talked about there's less than 5% of people that even fight the endgame boss for VOH. That means less than 5% players fought the final boss of the game. Therefore, they're not even at the endgame. If this is your average player base, and I actually don't know what the numbers are for, everyone, but I know that specifically on Xbox, less than 5% of players have the achievement at the time of that short that was uploaded, which was like, I don't know, a month ago. Less than 5% of players even get to that spot. So is your goal to try to make this game more casual with the game, or only is the goal with Diablo 4 to move in a direction where you're only catering towards the top 10%? Because that's what a lot of people kind of feel like the direction of the game is going. They call it aspirational content. This is something that was mentioned at GDC in 2019. It was Chris Wilson from GGG talking about how there needs to be content in an action RPG that only a very few amount of players can achieve, because therefore they have good builds, and you got to make it challenging enough for them. But I really want to say that Diablo's always kind of been, well, specifically Diablo 3 and onwards, has been mainly a casual experience. But the thing is that there's no difference in the terms of content. When you're talking about, a Pit 1 or Torment 1 versus Torment 4, the players are essentially doing the same thing. And it doesn't even really make it aspirational content. It's just that the numbers go up, and it's not even going to be like a skill issue. In fact, this is almost a subject for another video, but there's this thread that was talking about Diablo 3 taking more skill than Diablo 4, and I'm not going to go on too much about that, but the thing is that a lot of times in D4, it's mainly a numbers game, where D3, there's a lot more things that you could interact with specifically dodging certain, like, mechanics when it comes down to, like, the, the purple laser that would spin around, or the different little things that would explode. There was a little bit more play with it, I would say, definitely in terms of, like, min-maxing when it comes to D3, as someone that has, I did speedruns for D4, I had lots of rank 1s on speedrun, and then also I've been rank 1 on the ladder leaderboard for Diablo 3, because Diablo 4's leaderboard, the gauntlet, it doesn't really count, right? So I think that if they want aspirational content to exist, you need to put a pit leaderboard in the game. I don't know why they have a gauntlet leaderboard, but not a pit leaderboard 7 seasons into the game. It's a no-brainer that the pit is the area that people want to see the best of the best. And this person is just kind of talking about the whole thing in terms of aspirational content, but they are actually changing up the battle pass. But some people are mentioning that, like, if you're making the season journey, which, to be honest, as someone that plays this game a lot, I don't really care about the season journey. Like, for me, like, I just want to blast. If I get some cool cosmetic, it's like whatever. But the thing is that a lot of people like that season journey, and if you make it so they cannot do the season journey, to give them something to do, because I look at this from more of like a casual standpoint. It's like, okay, I hop on Diablo for a couple hours. What can I get done today? And can I work towards, right? It's great that we have a season journey for people that want to come back and work towards something versus just like a pit, number. So that area over there is kind of lost when they have the torment for difficulty so hard, making it so you have to play the meta build, because again, if everything is getting nerfed and the pit is getting harder, it's going to cause some frustration. Now, I also want to talk about Season 8 and some people memeing on it. I actually was really excited about the boss powers, and I was kind of surprised, but a lot of people are talking about this right now, and why some people are upset and saying, dude, there's just like no flavor, no creativity. So, if you guys have played a game called Last Epoch, you'll probably notice that these look very similar, right? You kill the boss, you get the boss power. Now, in Diablo's defense, I think Diablo's is way cooler because you get to use the boss power. It's not like, oh, you get some sort of like passive, right, of like some sort of numerical increase. You literally get the boss's ability. But I get it. The seasons are looking very, very similar in terms of like Season 2's power. But did you guys prefer this, or did you like, let's say, Season 1 where you just sock it in a gem? I think this is way more creative. The fact that we have like these boss powers and we can have like these minor ones that can do different things, I think the idea is quite cool. But just going to go ahead and mention it. I get it. And some people feel like it's not enough content. And I think that the way I see this is, as far as like the boss powers and kind of comparing it to other video games and kind of what they've done previously, the boss powers are cool. But the main concern is that where do I take this power? So like all I'm going to do is the pit again. Like, again, there are newer bosses, which I think is cool, but I think there needs to be more than just the bosses in terms of content, which I'll talk about some other solutions that I have here. But one thing that I think a lot of players wanted to see, to give some feedback to Blizzard, is specifically the tempering and the masterworking. I don't think it's that fun to go ahead and RNG. So to make this a little bit easier, because this person talked about, I just bricked some perfect triple GA boots. Okay, I get it. It's frustrating. It happens. It's part of action RPGs, and I think that because Diablo 4 is a relatively casual game at the end of the day, where the whole idea of making something good, there has to be a risk involved in it. So I get it from a design standpoint of an action RPG game that is more legacy. And what I mean by legacy is, like, back in the day, yes, you would brick items. That's a very normal thing in action RPGs. But players do not want to get the best drop and just kind of lose out on something. I'm sure a lot of you guys have maybe played either some sort of free-to-play game where like you had an enchant system and it'd go like +1, +2, +3, +4, and then like it could randomly brick. That was kind of the excitement, because if there is no pain with it, there is no, or there should be less satisfaction when you hit that perfect hit. But I never found it to be fun in Diablo because there's no real control over it. It almost feels like there could have been some special scroll that would be like, let's say if it was like a free-to-play game, that like you could put the scroll on it and it would guarantee that you get that one hit, right? So I would say that it would have been really cool to at least have checkpoints. So this would be some sort of middle ground, instead of just selecting, oh, I want the masterworking, or I want that temper to land exactly on it, that we have some leniency with maybe checkpoints. And what I mean by checkpoints is, if I go from 0 to 4, that's checkpoint number 1, and then if I go from 4 to 8, that's checkpoint number 2. And instead of remasterworking the item and going from, let's say, 8 out of 12 back to 0 out of 12, we then go back to 4 out of 12. That way there's some sort of leniency. Again, it would alleviate some of the frustration. You guys can let me know how you feel about that. That's one of the things that I would personally do if I had like the power to do it. This is another thing that Mimpy mentioned. He's an awesome rogue player. Shoutouts to him. But this I think is a good thing. Totally not copied from Diablo 3. It says pets pick up and salvage non-ancestral legendary items. I think this is a great addition. The reason why is like you get to the point in Diablo 4 where there's just so much garbage on the ground. And I know one thing that Colin mentioned, that he's someone that works on Diablo 4, he mentioned that he wants to value your time. And I think if players want to feel like their time is valued, one excellent addition would be, you know, honestly a loot filter. But this would be like an easier thing, I would say, because loot filters, there's a lot of things that you have to do, whereas this I think could be implemented in, and I think a lot of people would like this. It picks up and automatically salvages non-ancestral legendary items, because once you're in world tier 4, everything else that's non-GA is just garbage, right? So I think that this would be a great solution to alleviate having to go back to town, especially with the current season. I mean, I'm getting so many legendaries that it would be a very, very nice change just to have this. Next up, buff the obols, man. You made the brand new goblin to drop these obols, but the obols still suck. So this could be an excellent way to not give us like yellow items. Heck, even getting legendaries once you're in world tier 4. Maybe that the rarity can maybe scale with a paragon level or something, because there comes to a point where like, dude, I have my obols maxed out. I'm just like, dude, I don't even care, dude. Just leave them on the ground. It's more valuable for me to continue doing my content and going to the pit versus sitting there and clicking on it. I get, again, more chances of, you know, progressing my character's power by just going to the pit. This person over here was talking about, he's like, I was really excited and then I opened up the patch notes. Sometimes what it comes down to, because there's another post right here, when people actually read the patch notes and use math, he's talking about basically some of these things where like they say it's a buff, but they're like someone else, you know, there's probably some content creator that calculates it all and is like, okay, this is only a 1.1 multiplier, whatever. At the end of the day, I don't really look at these. I used to look at these, and I used to mathematically try to calculate as if I was using Path of Building or something and find out the best build. But that doesn't work with Diablo 4. Diablo 4 is a game where, you know, I gotta be real with you, you could have the best build on paper, but when you go in the game, oh, there's this bug, this isn't working, this glyph doesn't work with this doesn't count, this aspect. There's too many of these things. So I've realized that instead of getting either upset or too excited about a build, I just go in and play and see what the numbers are looking like. What does it actually feel like in game, because there's so many bugs. It's just the reality of Diablo 4. Now, will eventually, you know, all these things get sorted out? I hope so, but every single season, man, they gotta disable something, there's a new bug. And I would say don't get too upset or excited about the patch notes in terms of, you know, certain things in terms of buffs and or nerfs, because again, sometimes things just don't pan out for the game. There's just some number that doesn't work. I don't know why. It's specifically in Diablo 4 that just has this consistency and issue. Another thing that someone mentioned over here, someone says, I wonder if they even play their own game. And you know, let's be honest, they do play it, but a lot of these balance issues and a lot of these changes come down to, I want to say, like, people looking at the open world T4 as kind of the benchmark. And I think that the Diablo developers need to really focus in on what are most people actually doing towards the end game, because when you're balancing most of these things around specifically open world T4, it's not the same as majority of players' experiences are. Because, for example, the brand new Stormhorn on Akune's Catalyst, these brand new things they added, specifically with, let's say, the Ball Lightning Sork, I was really excited because I loved Season 2 Ball Lightning. One of my favorite builds. And then you go in, you're like, okay, I can't wait to play it this season. And you go in and it absolutely sucks compared to, like, you know, the top tier builds. Now, what I want to give them as a solution or suggestion for this, if you are making a brand new unique or something, it needs to be near the top. It doesn't have to be the absolute best that is so broken that it just makes everything else worse, but at least able to compete and at least be able to smoothly do the glyphs 100, as in pit 100, because you need to be able to get to at least pit 100, otherwise you legitimately can't even level up your glyphs. So I think that these newer things, like with the ice shards, some people are already calculating and saying, it's still gonna suck. The way I see it is, again, I'm just going to go ahead and play it and we'll see what the results look like. But, again, they need to test these out at a higher level. And I think that that is the one thing. I guarantee you guys they play their own game, okay? But the testing that is done is not at the same level as, you know, streamers and content creators that play 30 hours a day. I think I would love to have early access to this. Sometimes, you know, as Diablo content creators, we do get earlier access. And sometimes I can share that info with you guys, whether it be like, you know, when the expansion came out, we were able to test it a little bit earlier on. And, you know, we can openly say that, but they need to do a little bit more testing with players that fully understand the game at a higher level, if that kind of makes any sense. A little bit more testing would be good from experienced players versus players that, you know, or the developers that only just are testing out World Tier 4. It looks like it's pretty good, the damage is lining up. But sometimes when you have all these multipliers and bugs, and especially with multipliers, things go crazy. So I get it. But again, adding newer uniques, it needs to be relatively good, right? Another thing this person's mentioning that I think is pretty relevant too. So he's mentioning, if the problem is that with early game is that it's too short and boring, the solution isn't to make Season 8 early game long and still boring. And he's really referring to kind of the same thing that I was talking about, which is there's not really anything that's brand new to do with the next upcoming season if they're slowing everything down. Now, in Diablo 4's defense, we have all the boss powers. I think the powers are good. The fact that we have some new bosses, and now we'll have to wait and see if we can just one-shot the bosses like we do. But that's going to be a huge factor in how fun it is. But how fun is it to really fight, let's say, Belial 1,000 times? Like, can I sit there and farm Belial for 8 hours? I think it doesn't matter how cool this boss is. After you've killed it, is it really that much fun killing it, 8 hours a day, if that's the endgame goal? I think there should be some new forms of endgame content that can allow for almost infinite creativity, and I'll get into that in a second here. The other person that is talking about, like, aspirational content, he's talking about something that I kind of mentioned already, which is basically that if you make it so this new format for the super hard, end game here, where not everyone can achieve, it's just going to come down to, like, if you're not playing the most meta of builds, it's not like the players, because if you're playing like Ice Shards and you're like, I want to do pit 150, you ain't hitting it, right? So it's coming down to, like, it's not the creativity, and it comes down to just, you have to play the meta build, right? That's what he's just saying. You use a meta build here because otherwise you simply can't engage in the content. I think that kind of sucks, from a player that really likes creativity. Like, I like doing crazy theory crafting, especially with, like, stacking. A lot of the problems with the stacking in Diablo, it has a limiter, right? If you've ever played Path of Exile, there's, like, things called, like, Hollow Palm, or, like, anything that gives you X damage based on dexterity, X damage based on int, or your the amount of armor that you get, the amount of evasion rating you get. You can get this, but Diablo is, like, maximum of X50. So I think that capping those numbers really limits the player's creativity. Otherwise, you can have some, like, really crazy ideas, and maybe it'll be broken. I don't know. I think in a PvE-oriented game, if something's broken for a while because you didn't cap it, you could maybe change it later, but at least make it so people have a little bit more creativity with certain things to scale. This person's also saying, like, bosses aren't what makes it fun. The fun is customizing, your characters, endgame activities, and I think that Diablo 4 desperately needs more variety in endgame. This person also saying capping ultimate scaling seems wrong. Again, they're talking about all the ultimates being capped because Bloodwave is too strong. Why not just go ahead and nerf Bloodwave? And I absolutely agree. I think that if Bloodwave is too OP, don't just nerf all of the ultimates. But I also look at the viewpoint of Blizzard's own words from, like, their pillars of their game. If you guys didn't know, Blizzard actually has this pillar. It's posted at the Blizzard headquarters. It talks about by shifting the meta. They want the best builds to be available for a season, and then, like, next season it's something else. And I think that while that can be cool, the old builds should be still somewhat viable. Who knows how hard these ultimates will get nerfed. There are some that will be definitely mega nerfed. Like, for example, I thought the Cataclysm, like, when you're able to infinitely snapshot, I was like, okay, they're nerfing the Zal rune, where you can't get, like, infinite crit and overpower. I thought it was just going to work for your next skill. No, they made it so it only works for the next duration of 0.25, so basically it's your next skill, but only for such a short duration that you cannot get enough points to infinitely use it. And without the overpower, if you played that build, it sucks. So there's definitely a fine line between, like, making something, that's brand new, that's really fun, maybe some new uniques to make it good, and then you're also nerfing the thing so far below that, like, it's unplayable. And I think that is what players are upset about. Next up, this person talking about the Druid Helm being complete rubbish, and this kind of goes down to a lot of the things in Diablo, and this was something that they actually have wanted to change, which is specifically, like, the damage on Tuesdays. When you're playing a lot of these builds in the game where, let's say, it has this 100%, like, a huge damage bonus, because how it works is you only get this big damage bonus on when you crit an enemy, I think, like 100 to 200 times or something like that, and then you get, like, this big boost for a short duration, and then it goes back to, like, 0 damage. And this is a problem that Sorks had. They even mentioned it in their new thing where, like, okay, well, yeah, a lot of times with Sork, you're not doing the damage, so we're going to be giving you more damage based on the little bar where it's building up that crowd control. And as soon as I saw this item, I already was like, dude, this item is going to suck for Druid because you get to the boss, and you're going to have to crit the boss 200 times to get your buff for X duration, and then when you're not on it, it's going to be terrible, right? And it's kind of like they're almost making the same mistakes going back to the damage on Tuesdays on condition. This has to happen, and then you get to do damage. But because there are, of course, some bosses that don't spawn with ads, you're not going to be able to crit, therefore you're not going to be able to do damage, therefore the build feels bad, right? So what are my solutions to this? All right, so I got some quick little solutions and ideas that I think would be really cool, and I'm going to share these with you guys. You guys can let me know how you feel about these. So what would I do to make a season exciting? It could be season 8 or even beyond. I'm not saying we need all of these. Heck, I would love to get all of these in one season. Here's Slaydra's fix, though. All right, so we only buff the builds that are like really bad. We don't really try to nerf anything. Just make all the builds a lot better. I'm not asking for every single class to be exactly balanced, but one bare minimum that I want to offer is that at least every build can do pit 100. That way every build can level up their glyphs to at least 100. That's the bare benchline minimum. Now, if you want to go beyond that, some builds could be, plus or minus. It doesn't really matter to me. At least all of the builds must be able to at least get their glyphs upgraded. So that way you have something to kind of strive for. Even if you want to play like a bad build, you could at least max it out, right? And I think that that would be something that people would be more reasonable, like in terms of like understanding, and like that should be fair, right? Also, I don't really advocate for nerfs too often, but Bloodwave does do way too much damage, so tune it down to be in line. I always really hate nerfing things in games, but this one is too hard to bring everything up to Bloodwave's level, so I think that you can tune Bloodwave to be in line. Now, whatever that number is, whatever they decide, sure, but still let it be, again, my benchmark for the end game is that at least you're able to get your glyphs max to 100. I also would love to see a new class every single season. I know this one is going to be pretty hard to do because, obviously that's going to invest a lot more time, but there are games that do. There's a lot of, hero games that do that. I wish we could get a new class every single season for this game. That would be the ideal thing. And I understand there's so many uniques and aspects, but I think if they just moved into making a lot of these aspects and unique items more generic, it could smooth out the process versus requiring, again, so much work to be done. But I would really like to see a new class every single season. This would be really cool. I was thinking about like how could they actually do this though, because I get it, it's going to cost a lot more money to make a new class. If they want to either put it at the end of the battle pass or maybe charge for the class, you guys let me know how you feel about that. But I think to get excited about a new season, because if I'm doing the same sort of content again, if I'm playing a new class, a lot of the like frustrations of like, oh, I just got to get this item and then now my build's online. But when I'm getting all these new items because it's a brand new class, I'm excited. So that makes it exciting. I think set items would be a really cool addition to the game. And I think that generic sets are much better, like the LON set if you play D3. That way all builds can kind of become good. But I'm not looking for like a 7-piece set. I think set items could be like anywhere from 2 to 4 in terms of like how many set items are required. But I think that this would incorporate a lot more build diversity because, again, if you look at a lot of the builds, it's kind of copy-paste the same, right? It's been like this for a while in terms of like, oh, okay, you're playing this build, you need to get this specifically this thing. I think instead of like nerfing a lot of the stuff, just add World Tier 5. And this area will be an all-new area. It's a brand new island. There's new monsters, there's new bosses, there's new mechanics. I know this is asking for a lot, but instead of just making World Tier 4 way, way, way harder, why didn't you just add World Tier 5 as the new solution? Because when people hear World Tier 4 doing the same content that I've been doing for 7 seasons to go back and do the same thing, it's kind of like, I'd rather have World Tier 5. World Tier 5 was actually already leaked a long time ago, but they never really dropped it. Anyways, I think pit leaderboards would be great. I think the rank 1 player in each class gets to make the next unique, incorporating some sort of like fan, service here where they're like, okay, we're going to do this for the fans. The rank 1 barbarian gets to design the brand new barbarian unique next season. The next sorceress that's rank 1, or you could be a race for some sort of cosmetic reward or a title. It could just be like, Speed Demon as like a little title that you can have. It doesn't really need to be that insane, but just something to incorporate the viewer base to make people really excited to see who's the first to kill the brand new boss. I love it when action RPGs do that. It's exciting, right? But I think that this would be another great thing to do. Designing the person gets to design the next item. They don't even have to like be able to do the artwork on it. Just let them create all the stats. It could be as simple as just let the player choose a bunch of stats that already exist, and they get to like name the item and maybe kind of get some influence on maybe the way the item looks or kind of the unique powers or something like that, or the next mythic item, something to make it exciting. I think that it'd be also really cool. So I already mentioned like pit leaderboard. So like that way we have like aspirational content. Other aspirational content would be ranked PvP with rewards. Also clan battles. What's the point of a clan? I've been asking Blizzard this for a while. What is the point of the clans in the game? It's like another like chat box. That's it. I don't have any clan activities to do. So this is one area where I feel like really Diablo could do some clan clan stuff. I don't know what it would be. Maybe you can do clan battles to fight over some land in the new island. DI actually already has the ring to like fight over these towers. I want to be able to not only have PvP, but some sort of like larger scheme of like what you're doing in a clan. What's the point of the clan? Can you fight for a certain faction? Maybe you can fight for Mephisto. You can maybe fight for different factions, and like you can take over land, and there's certain things that you can do with it that are mainly cosmetic, because I don't think that we should tie this to like power in the game, but being able to do something with your clans could be great. And I think that they need to keep in all the activities from the previous seasons. In the current game state, I feel like Diablo 4 lacks content, especially towards the end game. I would like to see new content, but we could also bring maybe the, if you guys remember Season 3, the Senestrals, we had those like dungeons that we would go in, and then it had all these traps. Well, I was like, okay, it was relatively decent for rewards. I still think that, like, I didn't really care that much for it, but I just hate the idea of them removing lots of the endgame content where, like, I feel like we desperately need more activities to do. When we look at Path of Exile, a lot of the things, they may go core, meaning that, like, you know, those little dungeons, or if we're playing in Season 7 over here, like, all the little things where, you know, I really personally don't care about the little animal escort things, but the more things that we have removed from the game, the more that I feel like, you know, it feels a little bit dry. So they could bring the Abattoir of Zir back. We don't even need the glyph, just some sort of other forms of content to have. I think it's always just better than removing content. That's just the way I personally see it. Now, as far as the power goes, I get it. We can't have every single power compound every single season, because then our damage just goes through the roof, and the game gets a little bit harder to balance. But anyways, those are some of the areas where I felt like I wanted to talk about, some solutions, and, you know, why people are quitting. And I'm curious to know, what do you guys have to say about any of these things? Do you guys feel like this season is really, really cool? Do you guys not like it? I actually love this idea, though, of the boss powers, and I think that what players are really upset about is basically you're making harder content that we've already achieved for the sake of making it harder. And I don't really get what we're supposed to do with the power, because we get the power, but then, like, now since it's harder, it doesn't really matter as much because the content is harder. So I think they could think about adding newer forms of content to take this power, and that way we get to kind of experience it. Because, like, if I've already done a pit 100, right, and then they tell me next season, oh, well, your build can only do pit 80, or whatever the equivalent is with the new adjustments here, because we're getting nerfed in two different ways, I just don't feel as excited. It's like, okay, well, now I have to work harder to do the same content, to farm the same items, to go farm all the same mythics. I think that that's where players feel frustrated. So hopefully this can get out there, and again, I'm waiting to see, because later this week we're going to be able to test out Season 8. So we're not only going to be able to get our characters maxed out later in the week, because it's going to take a couple days for people to find out the best builds in the new season anyways, and there's no season boost immediately at the start of tomorrow's new update for Season 8's testing. So once we test it out, I'll let you guys know. Maybe all of the stuff that I'm talking about as far as like making it harder, maybe all this is going to be alleviated with the brand new powers. Maybe the powers are super OP, but like even right now, we don't even use the new Witchcraft powers for endgame in terms of like, you know, the bats doing damage or like the poison AoE. None of that really matters. It's just applying some sort of debuff to the character so it is affected by, you know, a crowd control or whatever, and then our character still does all the damage. If the next season's boss powers are powerful enough that we could still just do pit 100, pit 150s, then maybe it doesn't really matter too much about the nerfing, and people are overreacting. But again, the way I look at it is with Diablo 4, you just gotta test it out. You can't just go by like the numbers in game, because there's just too many, you know, factors in. But anyways, long video. Let me know, guys, your thoughts. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed it, drop a like. If you guys want to see gameplay of Season 8 tomorrow, I'm going to be streaming it and dropping some gameplay. But anyways, take care. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.